Welcome to the Future Resolution, Miles Mediation and Arbitration's podcast. In this episode, we feature trial lawyer David Freed, a freed bonder in Atlanta. David is interviewed by Miles Mediation and Arbitration mediator and arbitrator, Winter Wheeler.
Thank you for coming to join me today. I really appreciate it. David Freed, my illustrious guest. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'm happy to be here. It's nice to see you.
It's good to see you, too. In this time of pandemic, I mean, I guess this is really the only way I can see you. It's very cool that we get to do this by Zoom. Since we can't do it in person, obviously, we are social distancing appropriately. But Zoom is definitely a great alternative means of seeing each other.
Yeah, and possibly a new normal in the future, even when all of this is over.
Absolutely. So, David, I just want to let the people listening know just how excited I am to talk to you today. You're so modest. No, you and I had the opportunity to work together. I guess at this point it's been, I guess it started a couple years ago, maybe. And we worked together for a long time on a really interesting case. And I was always excited to work with you. You were super enthusiastic and just intellectual and strategic with your thinking. And I found all of it amazing. It was an incredible experience. And so not only are you my colleague, you are like a mentor to me. I ask you all kinds of questions all the time. You know it's true. And more importantly, of course, you're my friend. So I am thankful for all of those things and just glad you're here today.
I'm glad too, and I will say the feeling is mutual, Winter.
Okay, that's fantastic. And so just to say a little bit about you, David, you are one of the founders and owners of Freed and Bonder Law Firm located in Midtown Atlanta. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about your practice?
Sure. So Freed and Bonder has been around probably a little over a decade, maybe closer to 12 years. I had been working with Huntley Williams and Jackson Lewis before that. Scott Bonder, my partner, was over at Holland and Knight. Joe White was over at Sutherland. And we were all doing commercial employment, high-end defense work for those firms. We decided we wanted to take control, start choosing the cases that interested us. So we started the firm, and we like to consider ourselves a boutique litigation firm specializing in complex business, employment, and catastrophic injury litigation.
That is fantastic. See, I told you it was impressive.
Just trying to make a living.
Right. You know what? And I'm glad you said that, because that's really the point here at this at the moment. You know, so we're in the middle of this crazy pandemic, this COVID-19 craziness. We're on lockdown, and you know, every time you turn on the news, it's like it's worse. And you know, those of us who are lucky enough, blessed enough, whatever word you want to use, you know, we're allowed to work from home, and we can continue to make a living. And you know, obviously, I'm just grateful for that. I'm sure you are too. But, you know, I'm sure this has had some kind of impact on your practice and your law firm and your employees. So what's, you know, tell me what's been going on with you, and how are you making your decisions? What's happening?
I mean, I mirror what you're saying. I think that we're lucky. The legal industry has been deemed an essential service. So lawyers are allowed to work, and our experience is that lawyers are working. I think there's been kind of a pause, and I'm starting to see people figure out how to keep their practices running robustly. We did what everybody else did a few weeks ago. I think we're now on week 3 or 4. We did a test run right before everything got shut down. We sent all of our employees home. Everybody got up online. And we had a few kinks to work out, but we basically had a policy that you don't have to come in. We prefer you to work from home, and to the extent you need any help getting set up, let us know. So we've been remote now for maybe 4 weeks. We are having sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 meetings a week where we're bringing the entire firm in to check in, figure out what works and what doesn't. And at the end of the week, we've been doing kind of a happy hour just to keep everybody upbeat, let them know that we're safe, that we're doing fine, we're thriving. And we announce every week what's really happening the next week. In terms of the practice, I think that things didn't really slow up in the first week. And then, like I said, there was some great pause where folks didn't really know exactly how to behave and what they can do. There were a few orders that came out from the Supreme Court, the Northern District, that dictated what was being postponed, what wasn't. There was some ambiguous language about judges can take a look at their own civil calendars and decide what they were going to do. So we made a decision as a firm to continue to push our cases, but with the understanding that we were going to be exceedingly patient and understanding of anybody who needed extensions. And I guess the experience has been, there have been lawyers out there who've been extremely diligent and wanting to push their own practices, and the cases are moving. There have been other lawyers that have kind of just disappeared.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. So I guess to break all of that down, because you said a lot of good stuff. For your employees, you mentioned that you had kind of done a test run. That is something I've not heard from other lawyers. I talk to lawyers all the time because I'm kind of a busybody and just love to talk, right? Yeah. But I've never heard anyone say that they did any kind of test run in advance. So what prompted you to do that? Was that your idea, your practice manager? Like, how did that come about? Because that's a great idea. You know that one of my partners, Scott, is remote always. He's out in San Francisco. And so we've got sort of this remote weekly or bi-weekly meeting going. My other law partner, Joe White, was kind of on top of all of the stats and the progression of the pandemic. And we kind of saw it coming with schools, kids. And so as things started getting worse, we decided we're going to have to, come up with a philosophy, with a policy. And we were also getting calls from a lot of our business clients. What are you doing? What are best practices? So we actually wrote a policy for clients and for our firm. We knew that things were going to be shutting down eventually, and it was very quick. It was a Monday or a Tuesday about 4 weeks ago, and we said, let's get everybody home, figure out if everybody's got the right equipment. We had one paralegal who had been working remotely on Fridays already. We had another paralegal who, he's a rock, Sanju, who'd be there whenever we needed outside of hours. So we knew people were doing things from home. We wanted to see if everybody was on board with desktops ready, communication ready. And so the Friday before everything shut down, we all were home and speaking with each other about the setup and what worked and what didn't. We then announced the policy that everybody was going to be home the following week until further notice. And then that very next Tuesday, we set up the first firm. This is what it's going to look like for a little while. Is everybody okay mentally, emotionally? And is everybody comfortable working from home? And then we worked it. We started figuring out what works and what didn't, and making sure the partners felt comfortable, that folks were being productive, and we were getting our cases moved along. And it took a little while. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I understand, to you it sounds like it took a little while, but it seems to me like you did that pretty quickly. And so what I kind of heard you say was that you were already technologically advanced in a lot of ways and flexible with your employees with where they were working and, giving them the opportunity to work from home as they needed to. So I think that kind of puts you ahead of the pack, frankly. Because kind of what I've been seeing is that there are people are falling into a number of categories, and we've got people who, like you, were already kind of in the mindset of it's okay to work from home. Like, you don't have to be in the office to make sure you're accomplishing what needs to get accomplished. But there's lots of people who didn't allow their employees to work from home, or you've got, forgive me, much older attorneys who don't even like to use computers. They're doing all dictation. And so life has changed dramatically for them. And frankly, in my opinion, they're likely going to get left behind. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I agree with your sentiment. But to be clear, I'm probably one of those older attorneys. I was slow to realize how easy it could be. And I'm the kind of guy who wants to be in the office in the morning. I want to be here when the lights close down. I want to watch my employees be productive. So I wasn't so quick to do that, but we had other procedures in place because of the way we're spread out, the age gap between me and everybody else. But also understand that we do a lot of employment work. And so we represent businesses, and we were getting those calls already. We were getting calls from companies about how do we handle these, the work from home? Are we required to? Can we force people to come into work? And those questions kind of got answered by the executive orders. But we were seeing that stuff come in, and we were thinking, okay, well, we're a small shop, but and we were taking a real look at the numbers. So I wouldn't say that I was completely open, and it did take a couple of weeks, and we have initiated very specific policies with our associates and our paralegals with regard to reporting in with hot lists and identifying what they're doing. We're not a billable firm. We don't bill time necessarily, but we are asking our folks to identify what are the hot items for today? What else is on your list to make sure everybody's filled up? Because it's not like everybody's in the office talking about things that are going on and keeping everybody abreast of the projects. Where we see it happening now, the ease with which we're using all of the technology, the different platforms, cloud platforms, it is pretty seamless. Other than losing the direct contact day to day with the people, which I think is important. I don't think that should ever go away. I do think that what we are getting used to is going to present a real opportunity going forward in terms of how to conduct the business, what kind of space the firm needs to bring people on, what kind of technology we can leverage, particularly with mediations and depositions sometimes, not so much depositions until there's a better way to deal with documents and exhibits, not that you don't have to hand them beforehand, right? Giving a book beforehand. But mediations, I think, what you're doing, I think this is a brilliant opportunity to really get ahead of the curve. And I think people need to take advantage of these things. Like I was saying earlier, there's this pause, but I think that the pause is not the right way to go. I think that for people who do what we do, which is primarily representing plaintiffs, injured plaintiffs, whether it's business, employment, or bodily injury, we need to push it. And getting used to this technology and becoming experts with this technology is going to mean a more fluid practice when this is all over. It helps. It helps with costs. It helps with moving around, doing more things from your office. I like getting out there, but doing more things from your office is obviously less expensive for your client.
Right. That's great. I agree with everything that you said. I do have a couple of questions, though. When you're talking about, how you've been able to interact with your clients and moving your clients' cases forward, Are they encouraging you to continue and to utilize the technology? Is it you pushing that? And how's that working? Because obviously, you've already said you want to keep your cases moving, and this is a great way to do it. But what's been that driving force? Because you also said that you were a little bit reluctant at first, or you weren't the one pushing the virtual situation for your office in particular. So, can you tell me a little bit about how that was happening with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, so when you're representing the plaintiff, whether it's bodily injury or illegal pay practice or some commercial dispute, they're in trouble, right? And so you are really fighting for them. That's a fight you can't ever really ease up on. Where we ended up within a couple of weeks is, you've got two different types of clients, and those that are risk tolerant and those that are now unemployed and need a paycheck. So most of my clients have called up and asked for a status update. Now, we regularly do status updates. We try to touch our client every 2 weeks, even if it's a quick message that says, hey, we reviewed the file, nothing going on, or we're getting these records in, or we're reviewing this contract. Most of my clients have called up just to say, where are we? What do you think? And the fears out there are ranging from money being tied up, defendants and insurance companies, refusing to pay money because everybody wants to hold on to cash, to, hey, I'm doing fine. I'm going to take your lead. What do you think? To, I'm stressed. I haven't had a paycheck. I need you to settle my case. And so in each of those discussions, what we need to do as the advocate is to identify what the right compensation is, what full compensation for the injury is first, and then talk to the client about what it is that they need and what we can get done. And that's a hard discussion sometimes. And when a client needs you to get the case done, you get the case done. For the most part, we've been lucky enough to have clients who trust us, who have some tolerance, who are holding out. And I will say that I don't know that I've run, and people may differ on this one, but what I was afraid of is that the situation with the economy could get exploited, and we would be getting lowball kind of offers and teasing the client. I've not really seen any of that yet, but of course we're not a volume practice with hundreds of injury cases. We've got a select few.
Right. And I think that probably makes a big difference. Some of the attorneys that I've spoken to do have like the large volume plaintiff's injury type practice. And, they're seeing some distinctions in how they've been interacting with opposing counsel. I don't know how long that'll last, though. And frankly, I don't think it'll last very long. I think everyone's going to have to get on the same page and move forward appropriately. And there will be a little bit less of this kind of gamesmanship based on the current situation because we have things like Zoom. So, right now, I think the current estimate is that the courts will reopen sometime in May or the end of May, what have you. But we know, or we can at least assume, that when the courts reopen, everything that got canceled will be rescheduled, but it's not going to take priority, for example, over criminal cases and people who are fighting for their liberty and things like that. So in my mind, I imagine our civil cases being pushed way off. And I think we're all going to have to figure out how to peacefully coexist in our new situation. But frankly, if lawyers are not getting along and can't resolve their cases independently, which is often the case, doing a mediation virtually is a fantastic way to go. What's been your experience with virtual mediations? I don't know if you've done one yet. We haven't talked about that. But if you've communicated with an opposing counsel about the potential of doing one and what kind of feedback you were getting. I'd love to hear about that.
Well, a couple of things. One, it'll be a great day when the courts reopen. And I think that you're right, that some things are going to be pushed. But look at the practicality of things. First of all, what percentage of civil cases end up in trial? Not a lot of them, okay? And 90% of the work we do in civil cases is not in front of the court. So the closure is really giving folks, a 30-day, a 60-day, maybe a 90-day automatic extension in whatever's going on, whether you're in the discovery phase, the motion phase, or trying to resolve it. But the real practicality of it, in my view, whether it's 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, I don't know. The sooner the better for everybody. Health first, of course. But the real practicality of it is my opposing counsel need to be doing work also. It's their livelihood. It's not just the vigorous defense of a client and justice. It's their livelihood. So these cases are still on the move. Things are still happening, and that's what you and I were talking about. I think that everybody is doing their clients a disservice, plaintiff and defense, by not working the case. I think it's critical to work your case. And again, you work your case, you do what you can. 90% of it doesn't involve the anyway. It involves making a schedule with your opposing counsel and doing your own investigation. And I think that the more you reach out, the more you take this opportunity to reach out to your opposing counsel, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to move your case along. You're probably going to build a better bond with your opposing counsel also. It's not time to be aggressive and obstinate. It's time to figure out a way to get the cases moving. And I think that you'll find that your opposing counsel want to do that also. In terms of the mediation, I think this works just fine. I've not done a video conference mediation in this day and age, in the last 30 or 60 days. I have spoken to a lot of opposing counsel who don't really have a problem with the mediation over a Zoom or a video conference. Really what happens in mediation, in my experience, is you meet for 10 or 15 minutes and you with opposing counsel, and you do one of two things. You either beat each other up with opening statements talking about how great your case is, or you decide to do what I think is better, which is you shake hands, thank you for being here, let's go to work. It could be done over a Zoom, conference call. This is what we were talking about also, where I'm saying this could be, a real opportunity, not just for counsel, but for you, mediators all over, to switch to normal on how mediations are conducted. I personally like looking at you face to face. I like bringing my client in. I like looking at opposing counsel. I like most of all shaking hands with everybody when the deal is done. We miss that. I think right now you don't have a choice and there's no reason to wait. And I think that what we're going to see after all of this is it's a quicker, easier, cost-effective way to handle mediations. And when you're talking about spending money on mediators, with all due respect, that money can go in your client's pocket. So you can still get paid. We may end up saving money on overhead, things like that. So I think it's a great idea and a great opportunity. I've done Zoom meetings before. Well, not Zoom, video meetings before. I've done video conferencing. I've done mediations over video years and years ago. When it was just coming on and we had different offices, or a lawyer from New York and a lawyer from Atlanta. It was awkward. I think technology is a lot better now, and I think it's a real opportunity for people.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's an opportunity to move things forward, frankly, in a more friendly environment, most likely, as you were saying. I hadn't really thought about it the way that you explained it, but I guess it makes sense. We're all kind of, the cliche in this together, but that's true. And so who has time to kind of be nasty about things we don't need to be nasty about right now? We're all dealing with our home lives and all of this. And at the end of the day, we just need to move our cases forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you about a really funny experience I just had. I was looking at resolving an injury case. It was a bodily injury case, and we were talking about pretty big numbers in this case. The pandemic kind of hit, and my opposing counsel and I had a discussion that was very frank. And I said to him, "What are you getting from your clients, an insurance client? What's going on at the office?" And he said, "We're trying to move the cases." And I said, "Are you getting any sense that your client is tightening up?" He said, "Some of them, sometimes. But, you've always been forthright with me. Let's get this thing done." There was never an issue of exploiting the money. It was always an issue of what's the value of the case. I worked with the clients. I worked with my opposing counsel, and this has been a big part of the last 3 weeks. And we finally got the deal done. The deal got done, and he said, "I'm going to get these checks through for your clients right away." He's a little bit older than I am. The office is up and running, but they're using a skeleton crew. I think maybe he wasn't clear on how to scan documents. He called me up last night on my cell and said, "I've got the check for you. Why don't you meet me? We live in the same neighborhood. Why don't you meet me over at the Chick-fil-A tomorrow morning?" So I drove up to the Chick-fil-A, and he's in his truck, and he hands me an envelope. And it's the settlement check and the release agreement and dismissal. He says, "How do you like this social distancing?" I said, "I don't know that I like it, but I like settling a case like this." And he said, I can't imagine that it could be any more professional." And the idea was, and he's expressed this to me, this idea, and this should always be the case, by the way, not just because of the pandemic. We've all got lives. We've all got families. We've all got hobbies. We've got a lot of stuff going on after work. And we need to respect each other, that we're all doing our job. You need to be a little bit extra respectful, a little bit extra flexible in this day and age, and then you'll get it done.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I think if we can come out of this with more respect and more appreciation for each other, and the fact that literally everyone has their own life and everyone has their own struggles, and we can be considerate of those things, then I think we will be better off.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to drawing a line between what you can give as a lawyer, what's really in my wheelhouse to say yay or nay to, versus going back to my client on every little decision, because the clients tend to take it a little bit more personally. They tend to really tighten up when folks are making requests. We, as a practice, will liberally grant extensions and requests. But today, and for the foreseeable future, you're going to get a lot more bees with the honey, and everybody's going to appreciate that.
Right. I absolutely agree. So, we're talking about like long-term change too, right? Like, and we've got our new normal, and you mentioned earlier this could literally be our new normal. How do you feel about that? Have you talked to other people about that? I know you said that you would miss the human interaction right now, and of course, I definitely do too. But to the extent that this makes communication a lot easier, I think that it's been a great experiment in what we as lawyers and mediators can do and what we can accomplish together. And, for example, if you have a plaintiff who is ill and can't travel, you can still have them very much involved. So would it be something that you were interested in continuing in the future?
That's a good question. I think the technology definitely has its place. I'm a more face-to-face social animal. I think that I get further, I get better results when I can be face-to-face with my client, face-to-face with opposing counsel, face-to-face with the judge, face-to-face with the jury, face-to-face with the mediator. But I definitely think it has its place. You're right, ill plaintiffs, parties from different parts of the country, if this becomes acceptable. I think that it would need to be the new normal for everybody. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't necessarily agree to do a Zoom deposition. If I didn't feel like I could get the results, I wouldn't agree to do it as a mediation. Personally, I do. I think everybody needs to get on board, and that's what I was saying earlier in this chat. But you and I have spoken about it before. There's going to be a shift, and there's going to be a shift in the way that we practice law, even the way that we hire associates, and the technology is going to be a part of it. Is it going to be, turn the switch and we're all doing that? I doubt it, but I think it's going to become more and more a part of the practice. And if, in fact, somebody's experiencing this pause or somebody can't find work to do, this is what you need to do. You asked about the long-term effects. The lawyer I met this morning, he said, I'm sick of having COVID-19 meetings with my 50 partners about what it's going to look like in 6 months, but you have to. And it's not being opportunistic in a negative way, but there is going to be an effect on injury cases and on business cases and in the work field. And that's what we're doing. On top of the work that we're doing, we're trying to figure out where we land in a couple months, in a few months. I mean, the easy thing is, I'm hearing injury lawyers talk about, fewer people are driving on the road, so there's fewer wrecks, which means there's fewer cases. I hear criminal lawyers talk about nobody's going out, so nobody's getting drunk and drunk driving. Nobody's getting into bar fights or, acting out in public. There are fewer people, out there committing crimes. I think that's probably all accurate. I don't know if that's a long vision or a short vision. We're getting calls every day with weird, questions about how the furloughs and the layoffs and, are affecting every aspect of life. And so I think it's a good question for everybody to ask, mediators and lawyers alike and plaintiffs and defendants. Where do we land in 4 or 5 months? But I see things kind of opening up at some point and things returning to a normal. I don't know when, and I don't know what that normal looks like, but I think it looks a lot like what it did 60 days ago, with maybe some new technologies and new attitudes.
Okay, all of that makes perfect sense. So I guess another question that I have for you is you don't have a crystal ball, but what types of cases do you think we're about to start seeing? I think our cases are going to change. And, that's my opinion. We're going to see a heck of a lot more contract disputes, and we're going to see some force majeure and, business interruption issues going on. Are you starting to see any of that already?
Yeah. So what we did is we kind of divided up responsibility between the 3 partners, Scott and Joe and myself, to take a look at what kind of trends we're seeing now, not trends in litigation necessarily, but questions that are coming in. And as a small firm, we took a look at our own policy. So you hit on some big ones, the business interruption, force majeure. We are looking into the different types of insurance policies that exist. A lot of them exclude pandemics. Some of them have pandemics in as a rider, and some of them are gray. Where we land on that, we don't know yet. But I think Scott might be putting together an article, and we'll be publishing that soon. We're getting calls, the whole rent issue, and there's this idea that no landlords are evicting anybody. But the question becomes, and I got a call from a client down in Pensacola. They run a very, very large salon. And the way they do it is they rent a massive space for a lot of money a month, and then from the building owner, and then they lease out chairs, and they've got 25, 30 chairs that they lease out, and all of the hairstylists are independent contractors, and everybody basically works week to week with the rent money and from the money coming in from the client into the independent contractor's hands, into my client's hands, into the building owner's hands. And when you can't provide the chair, you're not going to collect the money and you can't pay the rent. And so the rent is going to be a big issue. We personally are experiencing, an issue. We are building out new space. We're supposed to be out of here on a date certain. If we can't be out of here on a date certain, we're in a holdover position on our lease. In a holdover position, you pay more rent. Our building can't get permits issued, so we can't leave here. So, these are going to be really interesting problems. The other thing that I'm hearing, and I know I'm going on and on, but this question about, can my boss force me to go to work? I got a call the other day from a business that didn't seem to be an essential business. It was a furniture and design store where they have all of this whole level of employees where they said, oh, you're going to work.
Right.
So, another question that came in the other day was there are employers right now using employee stats to get their stimulus money, but then cutting off who gets some of that money.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Is there some sort of, is there some sort of discrimination, employment problem there?
Wow, this is going to be a lot of very interesting legal issues for all of us going forward. You brought up a lot of things that I hadn't even considered, that no one had mentioned to me before. So a lot of that is just fascinating. But kind of along the same lines of what you were talking about, just a personal anecdote. I have a dear friend, love her so much. She's actually a dog groomer. And you wouldn't expect a dog groomer to be an essential worker. Her salon shut down for a while, and she was laid off so that she would be able to get unemployment. But just, a couple of days ago, she heard from her employer that they're going to open the shop back up and she needs to get there or she will be permanently fired. And so, she's just in this position where I definitely need my job. I love my job. I love the place that I work, but, is this really something that I want to risk? So, we're going to see all kinds of fascinating issues coming up. And, you and I, like I said before, we're lucky that we can continue to work and continue to help people like my friend, the dog groomer, who is not really in a position to help herself right now.
Yeah, and the question there is interesting to me. If you give an employee a choice, come on in and expose yourself or get fired, is that a constructive termination? Is that, subjectively a termination, objectively a termination? And then on the flip side, is there going to be some sort of claim where the employee decides to go in and gets exposed? Is there some negligent exposure or some workplace OSHA problem there? At some point, employers are going to be protected. At some point, they're not.
Right. This is going to be a fascinating unfolding of legal theory and just changes and how we have thus far approached a lot of these issues, because we didn't have, we've never been in this situation before, like in our lifetimes. And, hopefully we don't experience this again. But there are so many things that you could not account for in advance of this. And just fascinating. I'm interested to see what types of cases start coming before me to mediate. Yeah.
Well, that's right. There's no playbook for this, and there's no real crystal ball, like you said, on when this is going to end or when whatever normal returns. One side of it is that there's a 60-day pause. And in the scope of, a career, 25 years, 60 days doesn't really mean that much. And in 5 years from now, we may look back on this and say, yeah, it was a scary time. And that's when the Zoom mediation came into being, or, whatever, the teleconference really took hold, like any other big shift in time. But, it's scary, and it's hitting home for a lot of people. And I don't relish necessarily being home every single day. I feel like a caged animal sometimes. But then there's the silver lining of everything. I've got good concentrated time on my cases. I'm getting to talk to a whole bunch of cool people about stuff that we've not really been talking about before. I think people's minds are opening up to how to run the practice, maybe opening up a little bit about these ideas of balance and meditation and staying positive. These are good things, and we have to figure out what the opportunity is here, what the silver lining is, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to lick our wounds and get back to work and figure out if things are broken, if we let them break, and how to continue on or put things back together.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartely agree, David. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show and talking to me about all of these super important issues. And I know that it's novel issues. And I appreciate your insightfulness and your thoughtfulness. And I am grateful to be able to pick your particular brain about everything that's going on now. So thank you so much.
The pleasure is mine anytime, Winter. Truly.
You've been listening to The Future of Resolution, the podcast. You can follow The Future of Resolution on Miles Mediation and Arbitration's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and subscribe, rate, or review this podcast. Join us soon for another interesting discussion. Thank you for listening.